slave driver. There's water stations every 100 yards. We break for lunch at noon, sandwiches and cold drinks. Any man who gets sick in this heat, you tell your guard immediately. No heroes, no one dies on my farm. Questions? We have questions, but not the kind we can articulate. Questions like, why are you paying prisoners market rates? Why are you treating captured enemy soldiers like regular farm workers? Where are all your young men who should be doing this work?
The answers become clear as we work. American mobilization has pulled virtually every able-bodied young man into military service or war industry. The farms still need harvesting. The POWs provide labor that benefits both sides. We are kept busy and productive. American agriculture continues functioning. It is pragmatic, efficient, and indicative of a nation with such vast resources that it can afford to pay prisoners while simultaneously fighting wars on two fronts halfway around the world. Cotton harvesting is brutal work under the Texas sun. We move through rows, dragging long sacks, pulling the cotton bolls, filling our bags until they weigh 30 or 40 pounds, then dragging them to collection points where they are weighed and recorded. My hands are soft from 3 years of operating Panzer radios rather than manual labor, and within 2 hours they are blistered and bleeding. But Corporal Martinez, the guard supervising our group, notices and provides bandages from a first aid kit, wrapping my hands with the same care he might give an American soldier. At noon, we break for lunch under shade trees beside the field. Henderson's wife and daughter bring food in trucks, sandwiches with thick slices of meat, cheese, fresh vegetables, pickles, potato salad, and cold lemonade from enormous glass jars filled with ice. Ice! In the middle of a Texas field. In wartime. The casual abundance is staggering. Mueller sits beside me, wolfing down his second sandwich. Klaus, he says quietly, this farmer feeds prisoners better than my family eats back in Bavaria. Where does all this food come from? How can they have such surplus? I shake my head, unable to answer. But Henderson's wife, a friendly woman named Dorothy, who speaks a little German learned from her grandmother, overhears and responds through a mix of German and English that Corporal Hoffman helps translate. Honey, this isn't surplus. This is normal. We grow food, lots of it, more than we need. We sell it to the cities, to the military, to whoever wants it. That's what farms do here, grow food to sell. Bobby, she says, addressing Corporal Hoffman, ask them about their farms back home. The question starts a conversation that becomes a revelation. We describe German farming, small plots, family labor, traditional methods, chronic shortages, even before the war. Henderson listens, and I see something in his expression that might be pity mixed with incomprehension. How much land does a typical German farm have, he asks. 20 hectares would be large. 10 is more common. Henderson pauses, calculating. That's 50 acres, maybe 25? Son, this farm is 2,000 acres. We farm it with my 2 hired men, some seasonal labor, and machinery. The tractor over there, he points to a massive John Deere sitting beside the barn, does the work of 20 horses and 40 men. That cotton picker will harvest in 1 day what would take 100 hand laborers a week. America feeds itself and half the Allied world because we farm smart and we farm big. That evening, returning to Camp Hood in the back of the truck, exhausted from physical labor I am not conditioned for, I am thinking about Henderson's farm, about the machinery, the organization, the scale, about the casual statement, we farm it with 2 hired men and machinery, that represents a complete transformation of agriculture that Germany never achieved. About the implications. We were told America was weak because it was soft, but I'm beginning to understand that Americans are not soft, they are smart. They use tools and organization to avoid unnecessary hardship. They harness mechanical power instead of glorifying human suffering. They have made physical comfort and efficiency into virtues rather than treating deprivation as character building. And the result is not weakness. The result is a nation that can feed itself, its military, its allies, and still have enough surplus to feed prisoners who were trying to kill American soldiers 6 months ago.
Back at camp, after dinner, pot roasts, mashed potatoes, green beans, bread, milk, cherry pie for dessert, we gather in the barracks common area where we are allowed to congregate in the evenings. A radio plays American music, big band sounds that are forbidden in Germany as degenerate Negro Jewish jazz, but which several prisoners listen to with guilty pleasure. There are books in the small library, including German-language volumes that are not Nazi-approved propaganda, but rather classics like Goethe, Schiller, Heine, Thomas Mann. Lieutenant Becker, the pilot, has found a German-language newspaper, not a Wehrmacht propaganda sheet, but a publication from the German-American community in Texas, featuring news from both America and Germany, presented without ideological filtering. He reads aloud an article about German cities being bombed, another about the Allied invasion of Sicily, a third about war production in American factories. "Listen to this," Becker says, his voice carrying across the quiet room. "This article says America produced 50,000 aircraft last year. 50,000! That cannot be accurate, can it?" "American propaganda," Hauptmann Schneider says dismissively from his bunk. But his voice lacks conviction, because if that number is even remotely accurate, if the Americans can produce 50,000 aircraft in a single year, while Germany struggles to build a few thousand, then the war's outcome was never in doubt. The only question was how long Germany could delay the inevitable. I lie in my bunk that night, hands throbbing from cotton harvesting, stomach full of food, electric fan whirring overhead, and I think about everything I have seen in 3 days of captivity. The humane treatment that is not cruelty disguised but actual policy. The abundance that is not reserved for elites but extends to prisoners of war. The mechanization, the organization, the sheer scale of American industrial and agricultural capacity. And I think about the propaganda I absorbed for a decade, the lessons about American weakness and German superiority, the ideology that sent millions of us marching across Europe believing we were destined to rule. I think about Herr Dietrich and his racial science charts, about Hauptmann Richter and his lectures on American military incompetence, about all the teachers and officers and party officials who told us with absolute certainty that we would win because we were superior. They were wrong. Not just slightly wrong, not just mistaken in details, but fundamentally, completely, catastrophically wrong. The Americans are not weak. They are terrifyingly strong. But their strength comes from sources we never understood because our ideology would not permit us to see them. They are strong because they have organized their society around production rather than ideology, because they have mechanized rather than glorified manual labor, because they have created systems where everyone benefits rather than a hierarchy where most people suffer so that a few can command. I am a prisoner of war in Texas. I'm being treated better than I treated many civilians in occupied Europe. I'm being fed better than I was fed as a supposedly victorious German soldier. I'm being paid for my labor and housed in comfort. And with every day that passes, with every experience that contradicts the propaganda I was taught, the entire ideological structure I lived within for a decade crumbles a little bit more. The Americans did not defeat this prisoner through cruelty or propaganda or force. They defeated him through kindness, through competence, through the simple, overwhelming reality of a society that actually works the way it claims to work. I came to this camp as a Nazi soldier. I am beginning to suspect I will leave it as something very different.